Hello everyone, I'm Drew Goldfarb, joined by Rick Rockwell. Today we're breaking down the 2019 Tour de France. Rick, for those who may not regularly watch or wager on the Tour de France, break down the event for us and what kinds of wagers can be placed.
First of all, I absolutely love the Tour de France. It's been one of my favorite events since I was a kid. Since 2001, us Americans have been fortunate enough to finally get to watch it live on a regular basis. Prior to that, I always had to catch highlights or read stuff on ESPN or read in newspapers what was going on. I can remember all the way back in the 80s having to check out newspapers or my local news broadcast to see if they're going to mention anything about the Tour de France. And usually it was about Greg LeMond and not much else in terms of what was happening in the race itself. With that said, this year they're saying this is the highest or one of the most challenging Tour de France's in history. They're going to have 30 mountain passes. They're going to have like 5 stages that end on mountaintops or at the very least close to a mountaintop. And since probably 2006, after Lance Armstrong was done winning his 7 straight Tour de France's, and yes, I still say he's a 7-time winner. Since he left the sport, this Tour de France is the most wide open since that point in time. There's no clear-cut favorite like there has been over the last several years, partly because, and this going into this tour is just so exciting because you have at least anywhere from 4 or 5 legit top guys, and then you got another 5 that can potentially steal a podium place or even win if anybody has a bad day in the mountains, because guys like Chris Froome are not involved in this race this time. The 4-time winner is out due to a terrible crash he had a couple weeks ago, preparing for a stage in the Criterium de Dauphiné. Tom Dumoulin, who's second place, and so Froome finished 3rd last year. Dumoulin finished 2nd. He's out because of a knee injury. And Primož Roglic finished 4th last year. He's out because he didn't do well in the Giro d'Italia, and they left him off the team. So your 2nd, 3rd, 4th place finishers are not even in this race. You got the returning champ, Geraint Thomas, but he's going to be challenged by his own teammate, Egan Bernal, who might be the best cyclist in the sport, and he's only 22 years old. It's insane. So this tour, there's so much going on in one race. This is why I love it. I absolutely love it. 21 stages, a little over 3 weeks long, 2,500 miles. Like, you get to see the beautiful scenery of France. Now, trying to bet on it, that's a challenge in itself. So I'm answering your question right now, okay? I had to get all that off my chest. I'm answering your question. So you have a lot that you can bet on here, and we'll get into a few of this, but I'm just going to summarize it real quick. You have the outright winner. You have the podium finishers, which is the top 3 spots. You have the green jersey, white jersey, polka dot jersey, you can bet on winners for that. And then you can bet on winners for each and every stage. And some betting sites will even let you go head-to-head with cyclists throughout the tour. So you have so many betting options that there's no way you can't find betting value in this race. I love it. There's going to be plenty of entertainment value, and there's plenty of betting value.
You got into it a little bit, but with those stages, and cyclists race both in teams and as individuals. You were talking about the competition for the reigning champion might be from within his own team. How does that impact how you would wager on the tour when you've got mini events essentially each day, the full event, and individuals and teams to wager on?
See, this is part of the tactics that I keep trying to tell everybody about the Tour de France and cycling, but specifically the Tour de France and the other 2 Grand Tours, Giro and Vuelta. There is a game within a game within a game when it comes to the Tour de France. First of all, the individuals, in terms of going for the overall general classification, which is the yellow jersey, or the GC for short, these guys can't do anything without their team. You have a team time trial in the 2nd stage this year. So if your team is poor, you're already down minutes to your rivals. And that is hard to make up, especially in the mountains, when you might not be any better than the guy who's sitting 2 or 3 minutes ahead of you because of a team time trial. Then you need your team to protect you on the flat stages so you don't get caught up in wrecks, so you can dictate the pace or at least stay at the front of the peloton. And then you also have, when there's wind, and especially the crosswinds that can break up the field, you need a team that's going to try and shield you and also keep you up front to watch out for the break in pelotons because of the crosswinds. You can't do anything. And then when you get to the mountains, you have to have strong, what they call domestiques, and that's basically your main assistant, your main guy to help you up the mountains, to pace you when the rest of your teammates falling off because you're getting to the high altitude and you're riding at a pace that is so hard, you basically destroy the peloton, and it's only a few select individuals, which they often call the men of state. Phil Liggett always refers to it as that. And so the individuals themselves are in an individual battle with their rivals for whatever jersey they're going for. Then you have your team that has to help you to accomplish that, because you're not going to get anywhere in this tour if you don't have a strong enough team to help you get where you're trying to get. And I don't just mean geographically, I mean points and time in the standings. Everything's about time. The more time you lose on stages you shouldn't lose time, the harder it is to win the overall tour. And we're not even talking about crashes. Like if you crash and you have a bike problem, you got to have a teammate right there if the car's not there to help you, to give you your bike so you can take off the road and try and catch up to the rest of the rivals. It's so exciting on every single stage. I don't care what anybody says. People look at cycling and like, oh, they just ride around. Have you ever ridden 200, 170, 200 miles in one day and then do it almost 3 straight weeks where you only have 2 rest days? And even on those rest days, you're still riding your bike to keep your body ready for the stress that's happening. Oh my goodness. I love this. Love it.
Well, as you were getting into a number of jerseys that are up for grabs in the tour, let's start with the youth classification, the white jersey. Who is your pick for the win for that?
You know, without a doubt. Okay, so last year it was a 2-man battle between Pierre Latour and Egan Bernal. And that was Bernal's first Tour de France. He was 21. Latour has aged out now. He no longer is able to qualify for this classification. He's 26 or beyond the 25 age limit based on when his birthday is. So Bernal is the heavy favorite, and he's really the only choice here. Not only is he competing for the overall victory, for the overall yellow jersey, he's also competing for the white jersey just because of his age. He should win the youth classification hands down. There shouldn't even be a contest as long as he doesn't crash or withdraw from the tour. I mean, you can say that about every cyclist. So from this point forward, you know, you can just put that argument aside, well, whether they crash or not. Bernal is a beast. The only question is whether or not, if he's going to go for the yellow jersey as the favorite or if he's helping his teammate Geraint Thomas. And with that said, he's still going to crush the youth classification. There's nobody else that's going to come close. He lost last year by a little over 5.5 minutes, and it was largely because of their team's tactics in terms of him having to help Geraint Thomas and Chris Froome. Otherwise, he would have crushed it last year. This, out of all the jerseys, except maybe the green one, is the easiest pick.
So let's talk about the green jersey. It goes to the points classification. Who's your pick for that one? That's that big lock.
This is the 3rd oldest jersey. So first of all, they brought the youth classification in this, I think it was 75 was the first year. The green jersey's been around a lot longer than that. I believe it's the 30s, if I remember correctly, 30s or 50s around there. So the green jersey basically was to attract the sprinters, because when you think about it, the Tour de France is such a long endurance race, and with all the mountain climbs, the sprinters get crushed. Like, it's their goal to just get within the time limit of being disqualified. See, that's what another thing that casual fans or fans that don't watch cycling at all don't realize. They can't just lollygag up a mountain. Like, they have to get in within a certain time, otherwise they're disqualified and thrown out and eliminated from the tour. And after racing for weeks or winning stages or trying to make it to the end where you can win in Paris, which is the sprinter's ultimate goal, because that's one of the most popular sprint stages to win. The last thing you want is to not make it up a mountain and get eliminated because of it. So they have a time frame they have to make it within, and it's based on X amount of time from when the leader crosses the finish line. So it's not even like, well, you got an hour. No, you got like the formula, whatever it is, whatever they decide to do this year. And so usually they have to get in across that. And their team managers will find out, and they got to tell them. Also with the green jersey, you can pick up points along the way in different stages. They'll have certain sections that are marked green points or green jersey points. So you'll see some of the sprinters or some of the intermediate sprinters taking off in a breakaway to try and get those points, because that helps them build up their lead overall. So you get jersey points for that, and you get green jersey points for winning a stage if it's a non-mountain stage, and you get green jersey points for how high you finish in a stage. With that said, the rock star of cycling, Peter Sagan, has won it 6 times. He's tied for the all-time record with Eric Zabel with 6. He got disqualified 2 years ago, which is how Michael Matthews won it in 2017, for a physical encounter on the bikes with Mark Cavendish. They threw the rock star of cycling out. It was a 5-time green jersey winner at that point, 5 years in a row. And they disqualified him. They said it was an illegal contact with Cavendish, which it wasn't. To this day, 2 years later, I'm still pissed off about it. There's no way he should have been eliminated. The commentators at the time were like, this is ridiculous. Fans were protesting. It was terrible. But that said, Peter Sagan has not had the greatest of cycling seasons so far compared to his standards. He came in last year or the year before winning multiple races. He hasn't won a race yet this season. He's finished high. He's won a few stages, like in the Tour of California, but he has not won a race. That's a little concerning. However, because of his talents, because nobody can do what he can do on a bike, he can hang with sprinters, he can hang in the breakaway, and he's the best out of all the sprinters to make it up a mountain. Like, he is, if he could actually contend with the climbers, he would be an overall GC contender. Unfortunately, he doesn't have that type of endurance to hang with the best in the world in that sport or that position, but he's going to win this green jersey for the 7th time, break the record. Everybody's going to celebrate because he's such a likable character. He's one of my favorites to watch in cycling. So much personality. Love it. He's going to win.
All right, we got 2 more to get to quickly. As for the polka dot jersey, that goes to the King of the Mountains classification. Who's your favorite for that play?
You know, I've seen some so-called experts picking all over the place. But for me, since this is the French's bike race, right? This is France's baby. This is their Super Bowl. This is everything to them. And since 1985, they have not had a Frenchman win the Tour de France. So they try and, get other jerseys. The last 2 years, they've won the King of the Mountains with Warren Barguil and Julian Alaphilippe. Julian is a beast. He is so fun to watch. He's such a daredevil. He's so aggressive that it's hard to pick against him because he goes out on the breakaways. He's one of the craziest on the descents. He can hang in the mountains to a degree with probably the second level of mountain climbers, maybe not the elite. He's on one of the best teams in all the cycling. He's certainly on the team that's won the most races so far this year. He's got strong teammates with him. He should be able to be given the green light to go for this jersey with so many mountain passes, finishes on top of mountain peaks. I have a hard time going against Alaphilippe. If anybody can upstage him, it'll be Warren Barguil, depending on how you pronunciate it. We'll go Warren Barguil, although I can't do it with the French accent. Barguil, Warren Barguil. Anyhow, he was the 2017 winner. Alaphilippe was 2018 winner. I imagine one of those two are going to win again this year. Odds on favorite, it's going to be Julian Alaphilippe.
Final question. Who do you think ends up winning the yellow jersey at the conclusion of the 21st stage to win the 2019 Tour de France?
That is the hardest question of them all. I mean,
that's why we save it for last.
This is the hardest question, and here's why. Because I mentioned how those 3 top guys are out, it has opened the door for guys like Geraint Thomas to repeat, his teammate Inga Bernal to win, Jakob Fuglsang to win, Adam Yates to win. You got 3 guys from Movistar who could possibly compete. You even got Vincenzo Nibali, who won back in 2014 and was a podium finisher or sniffed the podium in 2015. He has a chance to come back and contend for this because there's no dominant cyclist coming into this race, and you can say, okay, he's easily the favorite. Like if Chris Froome was racing, we would all say Froome's going to win, or at least he has the best shot at winning because he's the best Grand Tour rider right now. He can win the time trials. He can climb with anybody. He's probably the best climber. So now you have this, and this is hard. I narrowed it down to 4 guys. Okay, yeah, I know 4. But we're talking about 10, 12 guys that can possibly contend for the podium. I narrowed it down to 4. Adam Yates, Jakob Fuglsang, and Bernal and Thomas. The problem is this, and in my article, I said probably the safest play is to split your money and bet on Bernal and Thomas. Split in half, bet half on each. Their odds are about the same. They're both anywhere from like plus 325 to plus 375 in there, depending on the betting site you're looking at. So instead of choosing one, why not choose them both? I mean, their own team couldn't even choose a solo leader. They named them co-leaders. We're basically not going to find out who's the actual leader until we see their level of conditioning out on the road, which could be almost 2 weeks into it. Okay, so Geraint Thomas crashed in the Tour de Suisse about 2 weeks ago. And so everybody was worried that he might not even make it to the Tour de France. That's what happened to Froome. He crashed. He's not even returned this season because of how bad his injury was. Bernal crashed right before the Giro, was out 2 months, came back and won the Tour de Suisse because his teammate crashed out. Their team has the strongest team in the Tour de France, okay? And like I said, although we're talking individuals, it is a team sport. The team helps you to get in the position to do your job. And you never want to let your teammates down. So with that said, I'm leaning towards Geraint Thomas because he's still got the edge in terms of being a better time trialist, in my opinion, than Egan Bernal. Bernal might be the better climber, but if Thomas has the legs and he's still up there, he's the veteran of the group. Bernal's only 22. He's going to have plenty of more opportunities down the road to win 3, 4, or 5 Tour de France's. I think what will end up happening is, as long as Thomas has the legs, he will be able to prove out on the road that he should be the leader. Bernal will end up being his lieutenant, his domestique to help him. And Thomas should theoretically this Tour de France as long as he's in top form. He came in last year, was the best out of them all, showed he had top form, beat out his own teammate Chris Froome, who was the heavy favorite, beat out all the other competition, with most of them back this year except for Roglic and Dumoulin. And now he comes back. He says he's healthy. He says he's ready to go. There's no reason to count him out just because he had a crash where all he ended up having was a cut over his eye. He didn't break anything. He wasn't off the bike for any prolonged period. I'm going Geraint Thomas. I say the smart play, though, is to split your money in half and bet on Bernal and Thomas. I can't wait to see what goes on. One last thing before we close out. Shout out to all of the Tour de France fans who are going to be out there missing Paul Sherwin. This is the first time since 1986 that he's not involved with the Tour de France. He passed away in December. It is going to be a sad moment, that first stage on Saturday, not to hear his voice that we're so used to hearing. He created so many memories, not only for me, but I'm sure for so many other cycling fans out there. He was a very intelligent, smart, charming individual, professional on the bike, and as a journalist. He really changed the way the Tour de France was presented to viewers, especially in the United States. I can't speak fully for how it was in Europe, but for the United States, he and Phil Liggett, and I mentioned this to you, were like Madden and Summerall. They were like Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan, for those who don't know pro wrestling. They were such an iconic duo for this sport. To be able to sit there and share with us for 4 to 5 hours every single day for 3 weeks is incredible. To keep you captivated, to teach you about the different places in France you have no idea about if you're an American, to teach you about the strategy on the bike, what they might be thinking or feeling. Incredible. I know when he passed away in December, it was a sad moment for me. It's a sad moment from my childhood, being such a huge fan of cycling and growing up watching the sport and knowing for the first time in 33 years, we're not going to hear him at all. I know they'll have a tribute to him. I don't know if there'll be a dry eye in my home, but anyhow, he was awesome.
Rick Rockwell, thank you very much. You can find more from Rick, including a deep breakdown of the Tour de France, online now at gamblingsites.org. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Odds On Favorites YouTube channel. I'm Drew Goldfarb. He's Rick Rockwell. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.